guys, so I am back doing my reading circle, and today the book we are talking about is called The War in the Waters by James McPherson. This is actually a book I've read several times. The full title is The War in the Water, or War on the Water, the Union and Confederate Navies, 1861 to 1865. Now, other books that McPherson has written that I own include this giant one, which is Battle Cry for Freedom, one of the most comprehensive books on the Civil War. Absolutely amazing book. I had to read it for college. The Negro Civil War, March Towards Freedom, How Lincoln Won The Boys of the Blue and Gray, and Hollow Grounds. So he's a very proficient writer on Civil War era. McPherson was actually born October 11th, 1936, and he graduated with his PhD from Johns Hopkins University. So let's talk about this book. So what's different about this book compared to many other Civil War books? Well, this is one of the few books I found that focuses purely on the naval aspect. A lot of times when we talk about the Civil War, we talk about the ground troops, we talk about like the land battles. We don't talk about the naval battles, we don't talk about the Monitor versus the Alligator or anything like that. Well, this book really focuses on what the Navy was doing, what the American Navy and the Confederate Navy was doing at sea, which I find absolutely fascinating. Probably my favorite chapters out of this is going to be chapter 4 and 9, which are the River Wars in 1861 to 1862, and 9, the Ironclad, Torpedoes, and Salt, 1863 to 1864. The river, we don't really talk about a lot, like the Mississippi River campaign, where they cut the Confederacy in half, and how the Mississippi was so important, plus any of the rivers that people used to travel on, like the Potomac in Washington, D.C. If the Confederates got up the Potomac, that would have caused a lot more problems. I like how he actually doesn't tell, like, this narrative overall where it's just focused on everybody, where instead he chooses certain people out of history that he focuses on. And it's a very skilled historical narrative. I really enjoy the part where he talks about the Battle of Shiloh. If you don't know the Battle of Shiloh, it's one of the big turning points of the Civil War. This is where we see Ulysses S. Grant and Sherman really come into their stride, even though Grant's going to be pushed back originally at the first part of Shiloh because his reinforcements didn't come down quite in time. But I like how Grant, this is the first time you really see the use of both naval and land troops in the Civil War. Grant was a master of this. Another unique part of the book is how McPherson presents the argument on both sides dealing with the Navy. It's a really interesting take because when a lot of people see and picture the Confederate flag, they picture this long rectangle. Well, that's actually the Confederate naval flag, so it's hard for me not to correct people all the time and be like, that's the Confederate Navy flag, why are you flying that? Because it's not well known. The actual Confederate flag is actually a square, and I'll put pictures up on that. But it's a very unique perspective where he brings a lot of things to the front that normally, as historians, we don't really talk about. Now, my biggest gripe in this book, is he jumps. He jumps a lot. Just to give you an example, let me read out 3 of the chapters. So, the first one we've got New Orleans, which is chapter 3. Then 4, the River Wars, 1861 to 1862. The Confederacy Strikes Back. Then you also have Damn the Torpedoes. Like, he doesn't focus on one section of the naval battles, he focuses on them all, and he jumps around a lot. I would have loved to see more about the River War. I would have loved to see more about the Ironclads. And he does dedicate parts of a chapter to it, but I don't feel like it's enough. Like, I feel like that should have been its own book. And I really can't fault McPherson on that, just because he's the first one to really address this. But it was like my biggest gripe with that, even though I really did like it. Now, I really enjoyed this book overall. I highly suggest it to anybody who wants to know more about the naval side of the Civil War. It's a really good book. It's a really interesting book. I like McPherson for many different reasons. I've read many of his books. And I have to say my biggest gripe, of course, being the fact that he jumps a lot. But I also really like how he includes in the book, like, you have actual pictures with captions that explains who everybody is, and he focuses on not only like the big battles, but the small ones too. And he also focuses on not only the admirals of the Navy, but he focuses on like the little men, which is great because these are men who a lot of times they don't get any historical significance, so they're kind of blown over. As somebody who worked as a Civil War liaison, it's always very interesting for me to read a book about different aspects of the Civil War that I'm not as familiar with. I'm not as familiar with the Civil War naval battles, just because we don't really talk about it. Like, I can tell you about Antietam, I can tell you about Bull Run, I can tell you about Sharpsburg, I can tell you about Vicksburg, I can tell you about Sherman's March to the Sea and the burning of Georgia, but I can't tell you about the naval battles off the coast of Florida, because I don't know. It's not something that I'm super duper familiar with. Two of the men he focuses on is a man named Footy and Eds. I like how he explores the impact of these two men on the river. I wish they got more time in the book, because he does talk about them a little bit in the river chapter, but these are two men who really kind of came together and came to the understanding of how to use the river and how to break dams and flood to get down the river, and they use flat bottom boats. So out of all, I'd probably give this book an 8.5 out of 10. I really like it. There's some improvements, but I want your guys' feedback for the next one. Now, the first two I'm going to list off actually are ebooks I listened to. The first one is The Serial Killer Files by Harold Schultz, and the second one is Bellevue by David Okenstein, I think. Or I can review Deadly Choices: How Anti-Vaccine Movements Threatens Us All by Dr. Paul Orfitz. Or Lies My Teacher Told Me: Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong by James Lowe. So those are the 4 books. Just comment down below. I'll have a link to all the reviews on them so you guys can read and decide. I just listened to The Serial Killer Files. It's actually really, really good. If you want to know where I listen to my books, it's Audible. So if you guys want to try Audible, I highly suggest it. It's a great service. Well, that's all I have for my reading corner today. Bye, guys.